Hello, everybody. God, it's never ending. We've been on like 4 or 5 times in the last 2 days. Big transfers going through. Helder Costa, Jack Clark, Che Adams, Luke Freeman out of QPR. But maybe the biggest news involving one of the biggest names, well, previously now, in the Championship has finally gone through this morning. We saw some pictures of Frank Lampard leaving Stamford Bridge at 1:30 a.m. yesterday, having finalised all the bits and bobs of his move to go to Chelsea as the manager. We knew the announcement was coming today, and they went quite early with it in the morning. So Chelsea have put it out, Derby have put it out, the deal that's been probably, rumbling for 6 weeks or so now. Frank Lampard, 3-year deal as the new Chelsea manager. Now, I don't really need to say a lot about Frank Lampard as a player. Obviously, one of the Premier League greats, and kind of acknowledged as one of the game's thinkers, not necessarily naturally blessed or physically blessed, but worked, thought about the game, tactical, clever player, and ends up with just this ridiculous goal-scoring record from central midfield and so many good years at Chelsea. I believe he's their all-time top scorer. Fact, check me on that. And we need to say right now at the outset, he would not be getting this job if he wasn't one of Chelsea's all-time greatest ever players. That is no knock on him, but it's knowing the club and that relationship that he already has and that goodwill that he already has that's probably put him over the top as a Chelsea manager. Let's talk about his short managerial career so far, and I've pretty much seen all of it because I covered the Championship extensively last year. So Lampard's first job in management started last year at Derby County. He interviewed at Oxford, he interviewed at my team Ipswich as well, but Derby was the best offer he got. Straight in there with Mel Morris, the chairman, and Derby with a history of coming close and failing, spending without parachute payments, and getting close and losing in the playoffs. That's been their history. So when Lampard arrives, he really has to generate a team that in some ways was still relying on the players that Steve McClaren put together a few years before. There's still older players like Forsyth and Bryson, Huddleston, Keogh, Nugent, players of that nature that have been there a fair while. The team needed regenerating, and as we know, FFP tightening in the Championship, players needed to go out. So Vidra, the top scorer, goes out, and okay, we know in the end they did find a way to compete with the Championship teams, the parachute teams, which involved Mel Morris selling back the stadium to the club and then leasing it to himself to make off the shortfall. You can only do that once, though. So that was the kind of on-pitch and off-pitch thing. And I actually saw the bookends of Lampard's Derby career. I saw his first game at Reading with a last-minute winner, and I was at the playoff final. And immediately from that first game against Reading, it was clear he wanted his team to pass and split the centre-halves and play a pretty different type of football than they were used to under the more pragmatic Gary Rowett. And the jewels in his crown were the young players, lone players, Chelsea players indeed. Mason Mount, Tomori at centre-half, and Harry Wilson on loan for Liverpool were added to explosive players. Tom Lawrence in there, Dwayne Holmes brought in, Waghorn and Marriott brought in up front, Scott Malone down the left, and another youngster, Jordan Bogle, down the right. He pretty much, other than Keogh and then Bradley Johnson coming in at the end of the season, pretty much regenerated the whole team and turned them into a 6th place Championship team. Obviously, financially, they were behind the parachute teams, but I've just said how they managed to make up that shortfall and still have a fairly reasonable spend in Championship terms. But one thing that I do think's a myth about Derby being high spending, I think Derby as a rule under Clement, Pearson, McClaren, all of those names in the past had been high spending. think you can accuse Derby of that, but not necessarily Lampard in that last year. That was more austerity Derby, let's just say. So he builds the team, had a really good run. In fact, went to Chelsea in the League Cup, went to Man United in the League Cup. I remember a great win away at West Brom, looking really, really good. And then he loses Mount in the middle of the season. Derby tail off. They don't have any intensity and purpose in the centre of midfield when Mount's not there. Mount comes back end of the last international break, and it's a really nice run Derby make on the way in. Waghorn gets his way into the team, but it's really the return of Mount that makes them tick. Into the playoffs they go, and I was at both these semi-finals. He got the tactics wrong in the first leg, went with David Nugent up front, and then I'll get people disagreeing with me in the comments. I do think he got the tactics right, as well as Leeds collapsing in the second leg, but went really tight central midfield, played all his quick players, and aimed to counter Leeds right down the middle where they opened up as they come forward. And we all know about that collapse in the second half. Derby winning that game, magnificent game 4-2, and ending up in the playoff final against Aston Villa, who just had too much of them. So generally, Lampard's career so far, I think 6th place was par or around par or maybe above for Derby. I think he spent pretty well on Holmes and Waghorn, Marriott, okay, reasonably high budget championship players. But the way he used the young players was really, really good. I know Wilson and Mount in the championship are good players, but the development of Bogle and Holmes, who I've mentioned before, and Tomori, whilst putting in experienced players like Keogh and Johnson in there, I think is a big tick and a big thumbs up. I think he did a decent job for Derby. Now, I said it at the top of the video, obviously your average 6th place championship manager, well, that was Mick McCarthy a few years ago, doesn't get a top Premier League job unless they're a club legend. But he's a young English manager, he is a club legend, and I think we need to now speak about Chelsea and say that this embargo they've got, where they can't sign anyone now for 2 transfer windows, really might be a key reason why Lampard has been brought in. And why this could be a good fit is that, I mean, literally, he worked with Mount and Tomori last year. And we know that Chelsea have this litany of really, really good young players that may now need to be brought into the team. The other 2 to mention, outstanding in the Championship, Tammy Abraham, goal machine for Aston Villa, and maybe the best of them all, Reece James, the right back on loan at Wigan, was a superb player in the Championship. So the brief Lampard is going to have at Chelsea is that he's got to get them challenging. Obviously, Abramovich always wants to be in the top 4. Maybe this will be the most patient we'll see Abramovich, because they can't spend for the first 2 transfer windows. So maybe that actually guarantees Lampard a year and a half. Let me know if you think I'm wrong about that in the comments. But he knows Mount well. Excuse me, struggling with my voice today. He knows Tomori well. I can see Mount being a bit ahead of Tomori. But James and Abraham may well certainly be ready for the squad, if not the first team. That's why it could be a good appointment. I can see people lining up to say why it'd be a bad appointment. He's very inexperienced. He's very young. He's managed 1 season in the Championship. And like I said, thumbs up, but par to around par. He didn't smash it out of the park and do incredible things. He just did a good job. So I can see why people would say it's a good move, and it makes sense given the embargo and whatnot. I don't think it makes sense if they didn't have the embargo, I have to say, and I don't think it makes sense if he's not a club legend. But you add those 2 factors in, and that's why I think it could make sense. But people do drown in Chelsea. Maybe the goodwill he has, being one of their greatest players, means that he'll be treated maybe different to a Scolari or a Villas-Boas or any one of those seemingly 15, 20 managers they must have had since Abramovich has been there. One thing I am interested in is, when was the last English player who was a great player that ended up becoming a great manager? I'm scanning my brain back. I kind of want Lampard to do it on the basis that, I suppose, Zidane in Europe, Capello in Europe. Dalglish, he's not English though. Just doesn't seem to have had in the last years. I mean, maybe I'm missing a completely obvious one. Let me know in the comments. When was the last time a really great player became a really great manager? If you're Frank Lampard, you have to take this job. You absolutely have to. It's the club you had your greatest days at, where you're in the Premier League, right up at the top with a great crop of youngsters. You have to take this job. So that's my feeling on Lampard, the manager, and the 1 year of evidence we've got, why it could be a good fit, why it could be a bad fit, and my want for a great player to become a great manager like Kenny Dalglish did in those first years at Liverpool, winning the double and creating that brilliant 1989 team. Don't know whether we're going to see that in today's climate, but hey, that's the dream scenario for Chelsea fans. Let me know what you think in the comments. I'm not going to talk about Philippe Cocu until he's announced from a Derby point of view, so we'll do another video on that. Where does it leave Derby? How do you rate the job he did? How do you see the fit and the hire? Do you agree with me that those factors, the embargo and the club legend, are big factors in why he's been given this job so young with so little experience? And how the hell do you think Frank Lampard will do as the Chelsea manager? Let me know what you think in the comments. Going to be a really, really interesting one. I always said Bielsa and Lampard were the biggest names in the Championship, and we've lost one. So from the fair weather national press fans coming to the Championship, we've lost a big name, but I wish him good luck. And as an England fan, and with that kind of sentimental head on, I'd like to see him do well. Let me know how you think he'll do. Follow me on Twitter at Benjamin Bloom. Hit that subscribe button. Hit the bell for regular notifications. And I will see you very soon, no doubt, when Philippe Cocu is probably announced this afternoon. Thank you for watching.